Good afternoon, students. Welcome to Srimeda IAS Academy. My name is Gowtham. I'm a faculty for Political Science and International Relations. I also take classes for General Studies Paper 2, which includes segments like Indian polity, governance, and international relations. Today, we'll have a talk about a very important debate that has been doing circles in various academic institutions, as well as among statesmen and several strategic experts. That is, whether the American financial dominance or the American global financial hegemony has come to an end or not. Today we see an era of tariffs, sanctions, trade wars, the rise of alternative power structures. It is in this context that we'll have to view this debate about the end of American global financial hegemony. We all understand that after the end of the Second World War, we had seen the advent of a liberal international economic order headed by US. US, along with its allies, had organized a conference called the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944, which had given birth to several institutions which sustained and maintained a liberal international economic order. An economic order which believes that trade can build bridges. Trade can be an important means to enhance cooperation and interdependence between countries, which can, in the long run, sustain peace and peaceful relations. However, as we all have seen, this liberal international economic order headed by US had actually, in fact, American global dominance. It is this very liberal international economic order which had seen American economic domination for the last 80 years. Following the Bretton Woods Agreement, which gave birth to the Bretton Woods twins, popularly called as the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, we had seen that American dominance had since then increased by leaps and bounds. The International Monetary Fund was an organization which was supposed to help countries facing balance of payments crisis. International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, popularly known as the World Bank, in turn was supposed to help countries finance their developmental projects. Though initially, World Bank had the mandate of helping countries recover from their war crisis and to help rebuild their economies. But later, the loan and the financial assistance given by World Bank was directed more towards building economic and social infrastructure in the developing countries as well as the underdeveloped countries, so that the trade can be carried on in a seamless manner. Now, these two institutions, the World Bank and the IMF, were two very important institutions which sustained American global dominance. America was the most powerful country in these organizations. With highest voting rights, America could shape the decisions of these organizations, and therefore, these organizations began to serve American economic interests by selectively forwarding assistance and support. Therefore, these two institutions became geostrategic weapons in the hands of US. Apart from the Bretton Woods twins, we also had seen the emergence of dollar dominance. Dollar emerged as the world's reserve currency. A lot of countries began to stock their foreign exchange reserves through dollars because dollar was a relatively harder currency. It was more stable and it commanded a lot of demand both from countries as well as private organizations in international financial markets. And that's the reason why dollar became the main medium of exchange in international trade. And America, as we all know, had this exclusive privilege of printing dollar. So America could, through dollar and dollar dominance, control the flow of trade, finance its huge physical deficits. And by, dollar dominance also began to support US financial hegemony of the world. So apart from the Bretton Woods twins, dollar also became an important means through which America could maintain and sustain its dominance financially across the entire world. The third important factor which helped America sustain its dominance is the free trade agreements that US made with several other countries and regions. Now, these free trade agreements became strategic moves for America, through which America exchanged market access to gain political influence over decisions of other countries. So, with market access, America could secure support of those countries politically as well as militarily. And this was how America used its very, very powerful market. Because America is a high consumption society and America is the largest economy with varied and very heavy developmental needs and priorities. America had demand for a lot of goods, including raw materials, industrial components, intermediate goods, and so forth. Therefore, America was a high consumption society. It said that an average American consumes 6 times more than an average citizen of the world consumes. And that shows that America is a very high consumption society, and of course, at that time, American developmental needs also were very high. Therefore, America was aggressively importing. And America began to provide market access to friendly nations. America began to provide market access in exchange for political support or military support by other countries. So this was how America used its powerful market also as a geostrategic tool to further its influence over global financial system. Thirdly, America also used economic sanctions to penalize countries which were in any way hurting American financial interests. And by virtue of being the most powerful country, America could use these sanctions to a very great advantage. Countries who were subjected to sanctions had suffered a lot and ultimately had to toe the line of US. And that's the reason why a good number of strategic experts say that the sanctions had affected nations more than weapons of mass destruction. These were called as sanctions of mass destruction. A lot of countries were pushed to the brink of economic disaster or sometimes even social upheavals and civil wars because of the harsh sanctions imposed by US. So through the use of sanctions also, America could exercise dominance over the rest of the world. Apart from this, you also know, America had control over several global financial arrangements and networks through which America was able to block access to other countries. For example, doing any form of international financial transaction, countries required to be registered with what was very famously called as SWIFT, Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications. This was the means through which money could be exchanged across political boundaries. When any country is excluded from the SWIFT system, the country would be handicapped because it would be no longer able to conduct international financial transactions. For example, in the recent Russia-Ukraine crisis, Russia was banned from the SWIFT system, and therefore Russia could not conduct international financial transactions using the SWIFT system. So these were several global financial networks and arrangements which were controlled by US. Apart from this, you know that US financial centers like Wall Street, they served as critical hubs of global investment, fundraising, etc. These financial centers also became centers for innovations and centers for financial exchange of ideas, and thus America could sustain its global financial dominations. For over 80 years, America controlled the global financial system through Bretton Woods institutions like World Bank and IMF, through domination of dollar in international financial markets, through financial hubs like Wall Street, by using sanctions as economic weapons to coerce other countries, by using its powerful market as an incentive to enter into agreements and to secure favorable political decisions or military support from other countries. America controlled the global financial economic order. Now, it is in this context that a good number of people continue to argue that American global financial dominance is slowly coming to an end, because there are certain forces which are undermining American global financial hegemony or dominance. The first such force is what is called as rise of China. Rise of China as a manufacturing superpower. The economists across the entire world are amazed at the astonishing speed and the magnitude at which China had risen in recent times. From around 6.5% share of global manufacturing goods in 2004, China suddenly emerged as the world's largest manufacturing hub, accounting for approximately 20% of global manufacturing or manufactured goods. by 2010. Now, this astonishing growth that China had shown was something which was beyond the comprehension of economists across the entire world. There are debates that are continuing as to how China could secure this kind of a growth, an astonishing growth. And a good number of economists have agreed upon a few factors which led to this trend of very, very high growth rate that China had experienced. A double-digit growth rate sustained over years, which was beyond the imagination of Western economists and scholars. Now, how did China do this? Now, China did this, according to a good number of experts, through three important means. Firstly, investments. China had liberalized its economy in the middle of 1970s, and since then China had been attracting foreign direct investment. China used this as investment for building mass infrastructure. Secondly, China could achieve this through investments in human capital. China had invested in vocational training, strengthened the quality of its labor, and this labor that was available with China abundantly was harnessed to support its developmental goals. And thirdly, one another important factor as to why China could sustain such high growth rates is because of state guided and state controlled development model. So very clear objectives, tight leash over economy, state owned enterprises spearheading the developmental effort, technology and innovation driven growth model. All these, which were guided by state, had been the third factor which led to such high development that China had witnessed in the recent years. Now, rise of China had become a very important challenge to American global hegemony. Apart from China emerging not only as the second largest economy in 2010, as well as emerging as the largest manufacturing hub in the same year, China has also developed several other institutions. We'll look at them very shortly. China had approximately 25% of global manufactured goods, which rose to around 28.8% by 2023. And we all know that today, China accounts for approximately 30% of global manufactured goods. Roughly, around 30% of manufactured goods are produced by China. It is said that China produces 1/3 of the global manufacturing goods, and China individually manufactures more goods than US, Japan, Germany, South Korea and England combined. China produces more number of manufactured goods compared to all these countries combined. That had been the strength of China. Apart from this, you also know that China also is accounting for one of the largest networks of banks. In fact, measured in terms of total assets, the 4 biggest banks in the world are Chinese banks. Also, China had overtaken the activities of International Monetary Fund and World Bank by becoming the largest global creditor through the financial support extended by state through an organization called the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB. So China has even overtaken the loans extended by World Bank and IMF through its state-led banking structures. That shows how China had become a very powerful actor or player in international financial system. China owns half of the world's patents, and China is the largest trading partner with majority of the countries in the whole world, and also with the major regions of the whole world. The position which previously United States of America had held. For instance, previously America had been the largest trading partner in Southeast Asia, accounting for approximately 37% of the trade of Southeast Asian nations. So 37% of the trade of Southeast Asian nations was with US. So largest trading partner of Southeast Asian nations was US. By and by, the role of US had subsided and China edged past US to emerge as the largest trading partner for this region. Today, China accounts for approximately 40% of trade with Southeast Asia. Now that shows how China has emerged as the largest trading partner, not only with individual countries, but also with regions. And of course, China is also the largest trading partner of US. The point here is that Chinese bilateral trade with US shows lot of trade surplus in favor of China. And that's the reason why US is not very happy. Furthermore, you also have to remember that the US economy depends on China, and this dependence came to the forefront when recently China was clamped with a series of trade tariffs by the US government. The way China retaliated, the way China had blocked some critical imports into US, and the way China said that it was ready for any kind of a trade war with US, and that China is not dependent on the powerful US market to sustain its exports. And China is capable of diverting its trade to other parts of the world. Now, this capability demonstrated by China shows that China is no more dependent on US. Conversely, US economy is showing a greater amount of dependence on China to sustain its industrialization. To ensure that the US market has access to these cheap Chinese imports, which could keep inflationary trends at a regulated level. This was how the scenario has reversed as far as US is concerned. Earlier, whenever US threatened China with some form of trade sanctions or trade tariffs, China buckled, but now China is showing resistance, resilience to all these efforts made by US. Rise of China had been a very important factor in the way US global financial domination is being challenged. Several other aspects also, for example, the performance of Chinese companies, particularly state-owned organizations or state-owned enterprises, which are popularly called as SOEs. The fact that China produces the largest number of STEM professionals, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics professionals. It's said that China produces more STEM professionals compared to India, US, Japan, Germany, France, Italy, Britain combined together. Now that shows the quality of manpower that China is producing. It is this qualitative manpower which is actually sustaining and driving the modernization of Chinese economy. And we see the results. We see that the Chinese electric vehicles have overtaken Tesla. We see TikTok emerging as the largest social media organization. See, in many ways, we see how China had emerged as a leader. China is in total control over critical minerals, which are very essential for sustaining cutting-edge technologies in today's developmental models, both in developing as well as in the developed countries. Now that shows how the rise of China had emerged as a very serious challenge to American global dominance.